Okay. So we'll go back to our chapter, right? So we finished talking about phobias. We talked about different types of treatments for phobias. Our next disorder to talk about panic attacks, panic disorder and agoraphobia, a very, very common anxiety disorder. How many of you in here have either had a panic attack yourself or know somebody who's had a panic attack? Just by show of hands. Good. A lot of you. I had my first panic attack this year. I don't know if that's something to brag about or not, right? But they're not all that fun. A lot of you raised your hand. Anyone want to describe what this looks like or what it feels like? Yeah.
Perfectly, I was like 4 months where I was having a baby, and the first like couple times, actually for the first couple weeks, I was going to the hospital every time.
Yeah.
Like I just felt like such like tightness in my chest, and also felt really hard to breathe, and like my whole body was like tingling because I was getting too much oxygen or something like that. It was just so horrible. Like it really, like, even though it's just psychological, like I seriously feel like it was so physical to the point where I like was taking myself to the ER every time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because what happens is a lot of people do think that they're dying.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for people to end up in the emergency room thinking they're having a heart attack, because your heart feels like it's beating out of your chest, right? And then you add the numbness or tingling and yeah. Mhm. No, not at all, right? And it can be, it's a very short lasting thing, relatively short lasting, but it can be incredibly intense and frightening. Other people, other stories or comments of what that felt like or looked like, if you've seen other people or yourself had a panic attack? Yeah. I haven't yet, no.
It's not much of very visual scene with sounds. It's pretty graphic.
Okay.
It's by one of the main statement characters. But it is the characters are human, but the chance rather. And my partner did not like that at all.
Okay.
I mean, you don't actually see these people die, but you can die. It's like really graphic. And they had a panic attack right then. They're right next to me.
Oh.
So for them, it's kind of like this shutting down. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like sometimes it might be fear.
Mhm.
Yeah, I imagine very terrible.
Yeah, some people shut down and kind of collapse. Other people, like, it feels like you're having a heart attack. There's a lot of different symptoms that can go with this. So let's look at some of the things that might happen in order to fit the criteria of having a panic attack. So in order to meet the diagnostic criteria, right, for this, you have to have 4 or more symptoms. That reach a peak. What word do they use? I think it's within minutes, so abruptly, but we'll say within minutes. So this tends to be something that, as I said, is very short lasting, but it can take people days or hours at least to recover from. It can be really exhausting in the long term. But you have a wide variety of symptoms, 4 or more, that reach a peak within minutes. Okay, so it's a very quick happening kind of event. So heart palpitations. So your heart starts beating very quickly. As I said, it almost feels like it's beating out of your chest. People often mistake this for a heart attack because it can feel so intense. Sweating is another one. Trembling or shaking. Oftentimes people will start to shake or tremble from the anxiety that they're experiencing, feeling like you are choking. Sometimes people feel like they can't swallow or they have a shortness of breath. Oftentimes what happens with this as well is as you start experiencing some of these things, it causes you to panic more. And then these symptoms start to get stronger and stronger. You get caught in this like panic loop, which is very, very common with this disorder. Chest pain. nausea. But oftentimes people will throw up or feel really sick to their stomach. You might feel dizzy. Numbness or tingling. And then there's often this sense of derealization, where things around you don't feel real. Maybe they feel fuzzy, or you get like tunnel vision, or things feel far away. You start to almost feel disconnected from the world around you. Everything becomes a little bit blurry. The only other thing I could think to add is chills or hot flashes. And then one more, which is really common with this disorder, is there's kind of this sense of impending death. You feel like you're going to die. Really common for people to have that fear as they have a panic attack. And we'll talk about the causes in a moment. But again, as I mentioned, it kind of feeds itself, right? The more panic you feel, the more you feel these things, which leads to more panic and so on. And people can have an isolated panic attack, or if they start having panic attacks regularly, then we say they have panic disorder. So if people have panic disorder, it's somebody who has recurrent panic attacks. And the key with these is they're not necessarily brought on by anything specific. Right now, something might trigger it, but if it continues to be the same thing triggering it every time, then it's probably more of like a phobia or something more like concrete or specific. These can be brought on by nothing. It can be kind of situational in nature, but people can sometimes develop a panic disorder if they're happening frequently. One time would just be a panic attack. And there's something interesting that goes with these. It's a very common element of panic attacks. It's called agoraphobia. Probably one of the most interesting phobias, in my opinion. It's a really kind of nuanced one, but it's common enough with this that we actually diagnose it as panic disorder with or without agoraphobia. Because what we see is that sometimes people who have panic disorder become afraid to leave their house, right? They become afraid to be out in public because they might have a panic attack and they don't want to be embarrassed or not be able to get back to a spot of safety. Agoraphobia has like multiple elements to it. It's an intense fear of crowds, public places, and other situations that require separation from a source of security. So it might be being out in public away from your home. It also has an element of embarrassment to it. It's like being out of control or a fear of being embarrassed in front of other people and not being able to do anything about it, or not being able to escape. There's kind of multiple prongs of this phobia, but it's really, really common with this disorder. Somebody has a panic attack and they start worrying that it's going to happen again while they're in class. So they don't want to go to class because they're so afraid it will happen, right? They want to stay at home where they feel safe. If you've ever seen, there's a Netflix show, Woman in the Window, right? A really good example of someone with agoraphobia. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Even better, right? Yeah. So stays in her home, is watching people through the window. There's an older one, Copycat, which is about Sigourney Weaver's in it. She's a writer. She's afraid to leave her home. It's oftentimes writers in these shows, which is interesting. But you see this show up quite a bit with this disorder, and they tend to be together, which is why we mention it so much here. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the hope, right? Is once you start to, that's actually one of the things with the cognitive part of it. Once you start understanding what's happening, that actually can be really helpful, right? So the first panic attack for people is oftentimes the worst because you think you're dying, you think it's medical, you don't know what's going on. But if you've had them repeatedly, sometimes you get to a point where you're like, okay, I know what's happening. I know what to expect. And that might actually help you to calm down a little bit. It can take people a little while to get to that point, but that's the goal of like a cognitive perspective is if we can educate you on what's happening and you start to feel this stuff, right? Then you can go, okay, I'm having a panic attack. I need to do something to intervene and calm myself down. I just saw a TikTok. It was like 3 days ago. The guy's like starting to have a panic attack and his friend's like, here, will you hold this, and distracts him. And he stops, he like gets distracted and stops having the panic attack. Should see if I can find that. But If you can stop it early, you might be able to turn it around. And being aware of it because you've had them before sometimes helps with that. Did you have a thought with that one?
That was 100%. Don't have to be like rely on like, okay, so I'm feeling this way because of this, and like I said, with the tingling, I felt like the
Yeah.
the doctor's saying it's happening.
Right.
That helps you rationalize it, so it's just like a physiological thing that doesn't mean that I'm actually in pain or.
Right. I'm not dying. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be okay.
I think you're right.
Yeah, and it's really valuable, I've had this before. I understand what the tingling is. I understand what the heart pounding is. I understand why things don't feel real. And that's very much here, right? So trying to work on somebody's anxiety sensitivity, learning to interpret those things going on in your body a little better, that can help you to calm down. Yeah.
Do panic attacks have triggers or do you have any correlation with stress?
Oftentimes the more stress and anxiety people have in their life, the more susceptible they might be. The hard thing with panic attacks is they're often somewhat random, and that's why people develop that agoraphobia, because you don't know when it's going to happen. But if you're under high levels of anxiety and stress, that can oftentimes be what brings it on. Yeah. The other one up at the top, I skipped it for a moment, just in the where we were at. But the biological perspective looks at norepinephrine and genetics as contributors. Norepinephrine is very much like something that we can target with antidepressant medications. Antidepressant medications work on like dopamine and norepinephrine and serotonin. And so if people are having regular panic attacks, we might consider giving them medication to help lower their anxiety levels in general, or we can help them learn how to calm down on their own. And kind of learning some techniques. But this cognitive one plays a really big role, especially if you're having panic attacks often. Learning better coping skills, learning how to recognize what's happening can be really helpful for turning that around. Yeah.
So what's the
Yeah, so agoraphobia is tricky. Okay, so if I go back for 1 second. So social anxiety has to do with performing in front of others, or people maybe watching you and staring at you, right? You don't want to eat in front of others, talk in front of others, or any of that kind of stuff. Agoraphobia oftentimes has to do with like a sense of safety or security. So I'll share with you, like I have agoraphobia a little bit. I've gotten so much better with it. But for me, if I go to any kind of performance, I cannot sit in the middle of a row because I feel like I can't get out. If I want to get out, I can't. Like I'm stuck. So we took our kids to see Hamilton, which was so much fun. And the only seats that they had were in the middle of a row. And I spent the whole time so stressed out that like I would need to escape for some reason, that it was hard to enjoy the show. So whenever we go to a show, I always sit on the end because I want to be able to get out. And something about that has to do with this sense of security. It's a fear that like you'll need to get out or get to a place of security and you can't, which is a little bit different from like worrying what people will think of you when you're performing, like in front of them or talking in front of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like you like measure, so like listen to this time, you don't feel like you just feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Being in the environment or something, or like you really need to get out of the place, like
Mm-hmm.
or like if it's smaller, then can you say you have it, or
You could, I mean, only if it really is interfering, right? So like for me, like I mentioned, we went to this show and I couldn't enjoy the show because I was so like stressed that I couldn't get out of this row. Like I kept clocking like, okay, this way would be faster. Might be faster if I jumped over the seat and walked back. Like I feel crazy sitting there, right? I'm sitting there watching the show and all I can think about is how am I going to get out if I need to get out, right? And so when it starts to interfere with your life, when it starts to cause you that distress and impairment, then it's gone beyond like, well, I like to sit on the end and I would prefer to sit there. It's more like, well, I'm not going to go to the show unless I can sit on the end, right? Which I wish I had done, but it was too late. There was only middle tickets left. I mean, I made it through it just fine, right? And the more you can push yourself to do those things, the better it tends to get. But this one is a very unique phobia. It's got a lot of different elements to it. Oops, let me go back here. So again, these are the two big ones here, right? Biological stuff and cognitive stuff. Any other panic attack or panic disorder related questions before we go to the next one? Any other stories or comments or anything? Yeah.
Does animals fall under like anxiety?
Mhm. No, so it's under all of these that we're talking about are under the umbrella of anxiety. So like panic disorder, OCD, which we'll go to next, and then phobias and generalized anxiety, all of them are anxiety disorders, which are the most common by far. A lot of people struggle with anxiety. Yeah.
What separates?
Same thing, right? So I'm glad you asked, because they're very commonly confused, right? An anxiety attack and a panic attack are the exact same thing. And one's just kind of like a common term versus a diagnosis. All right. So the next thing that we'll talk about is obsessive compulsive disorder. But before we get there, a little bit about superstitions, because obsessive compulsive disorder is exceedingly rooted in superstitious thinking. Now, a lot of us probably have superstitious beliefs, right? That's not abnormal in any way. A superstition is a belief or practice surrounding luck, prophecy, or spiritual beings, particularly the irrational belief that future events can be influenced or foretold by specific unrelated prior events. So if I don't do this, something bad will happen. Or if I don't do this, maybe I won't have success in whatever I'm doing. Superstitious beliefs are exceedingly common, but if they go too far and people are embracing them too much, it's kind of becoming obsessive compulsive disorder related, which we'll get to in a second. And I have a couple of common ones up here. What a day keeps the doctor away?
Apple.
An apple, right? Step on what and break what? Yeah, so when you're mad at your mom, every crack you can find, right? That was me as a kid. I'd be like, stepping on every crack and I'm mad at my mom. Never worked, right? But it was worth a shot. Good luck to carry a rabbit's foot. Bad luck to walk under a ladder. Bad luck to break a mirror, and black water, bad luck. Cats. I have 2 black cats. I'm in trouble, right? Not really. One's black and white, so technically just one black. But lots of these superstitious beliefs have been around a long time. They're very cultural at times. And there's a ton of them. Anyone have another one? Anyone have another common like superstitious belief? Yeah. Yeah. Really bad luck to open an umbrella inside, right? It's something with steals your soul, or your soul will escape or something like that. Yeah, it has to do with your soul, right? What else? Anyone else have one? Yeah.
Just in Middle Eastern culture, it's like a bad omen to like compliment someone if you like on their jewelry or something nice they have, because it's like a sign of jealousy and like
Interesting.
like it gives them bad energy when they carry around with you. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that one, but there's a lot of interesting like cultural
Yeah,
ones.
there's a lot of like jokes on TikTok where like certain ones like jewelry, she'll just give it off and give it to you, but you just can't deal with it.
You're like, ooh, I like that. It looks pretty on
Yeah,
you.
like, well, have it. I'll never wear it again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now I need to know. Did you have one as well?
Yeah, that's what I was talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah. Throwing salt over your shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah. Really bad luck to spill salt. So interesting history on that one. Salt was a really expensive commodity back in time, to go back hundreds of years. So it was thought to be really bad luck if you spilled it because it was so expensive. And what would happen is it was thought that demons would come after you if you spilled salt. So you have to throw it over your shoulder to blind the demon that's lurking behind you. Random little piece of information for you. What about knocking on wood? Anyone knock on wood? Said this to my partner yesterday. I was like, she said, oh, everything's going so well. And I'm like, you better knock on wood like quickly, right? Knocking on wood, you're calling on the good spirits. It was thought that spirits lived in trees. So anything made from trees would contain the luck of good spirits. You knock on it to call on their fortune and luck to come forward. Another random side note. 13 being an unlucky number, right? Judas was the 13th guest at the Last Supper. 13, usually you don't see 13 on elevators. There's not a 13th floor in hotels. Friday the 13th is a day of bad luck. Apparently it's my day to watch like Friday the 13th movies, but a lot of people think it's a day of bad luck. Yeah. Yeah.
They don't have like doors.
Interesting. Yeah. Cultural differences, right? Anyone in here in theater or performance in any way? Right, what are you not supposed to say? What's bad luck? Oh yeah, Macbeth, don't say Macbeth, that's bad luck. Don't wish people good luck, you have to say break a leg, right? There's a whole show, if you've ever seen The Producers, like it's bad luck to say good luck on opening night. It's like a whole thing related to that. Anyone in here an athlete? Right, yeah, a couple of you. Athletes are notorious for superstitious beliefs, right? If you watch any basketball player or baseball player, they all have little routines, like they go to do that foul shot, certain number of times they flip the ball or dribble the ball or do whatever, they have like a routine. Or go up to bat in baseball, how many times they take the glove on and off, swing, step in and out of the box, right? If I don't do these things, bad luck will happen. There's a lot of that in sports and performance, and there's nothing wrong with those beliefs. But when you feel like if you don't do it, something bad will happen, and you start to think that those two things are really connected to each other, you can get yourself into trouble a little bit, right? And that's where we start to get into the realm of like OCD, which we'll talk more about on the next slide. I found this little, it's related to football, so I'll play it for you. It was like a little commercial about little odd superstitious things people do as they prepare for football games. So years ago, right, when he was a Patriot, they had that nearly perfect season where they were like 18-1. They lost that last game in the Super Bowl. I wore my lucky hat and jersey every single game. Right. And they won every single game. And I didn't wash it because I felt like if I washed it, I'd wash off the bad luck, something that like a lot of athletes will do as well. And my partner just before the Super Bowl washed my jersey and they lost the Super Bowl and I blamed her. And I was like, it's all your fault. I had a big old fight about it. I was like, it's your fault. You washed my jersey. She's like, it was dirty. It needed to be washed. I'm like, after the game, they lost because of you. And rationally, I know that's not true. But again, you're connecting things. And this is very, very along the lines of OCD. Yeah.
My sister was 6 when my dad's friends used to pay her to watch football games because like the team he was rooting for would always win when she was watching.
Right.
So he would literally pay her like $40 by the end of it to just watch a football game.
That's awesome. Right. I would love that. That would be a
Yeah.
nice little thing. Yeah, I had my close friend, like we had this like long streak. Every time he would come over and we'd watch games together, I'd win hundreds of dollars playing FanDuel. And so I'd invite him over every Sunday, but like, you got to come over, buddy. I want to win. And then it finally stopped. Right. But yeah, we get these little ideas in our head that things are connected and they may or may not be, right, depending on your beliefs. But obsessive compulsive disorder has to do with these thoughts that drive behaviors, very much like superstitious thinking. And so with obsessive compulsive disorder, we have anxiety, we have these anxious, obsessive thoughts, which lead to kind of ritualistic compulsive behaviors. And so if we define obsessions and compulsions, which I have here on the next slide, obsessions are the thoughts or images or impulses that pop into your head and they cause you anxiety and they feel out of control. The compulsions are the things that you perform, the behaviors that you do over and over again, according to like certain rules or things that you feel like you have to follow. Anyone in here know someone with obsessive compulsive disorder? A few of you, any stories or comments or anything? Yeah.
The last slide, but
Sure.
He had pretty severe OCD and he had one with a step in a crack and break your mom's back.
Mhm.
And then seeing that, and I get like seeing Valley Home Center, it's like the whole mall is like made of tile.
Yeah,
And I remember
cracks everywhere.
yeah, he couldn't step on it, so he like tiptoed through the entire mall because he genuinely thought he'd step on it right football.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, well, and you can imagine how that would cause someone some like social awkwardness and maybe avoiding them all like altogether. Right, wow, yeah, that would be difficult. That place is very empty and difficult to walk through. Anybody else or a few other hands, any other stories or thoughts or anything? Yeah,
Question.
sure.
So, with obsessive compulsive disorder, like also would it have to do with people just needing everything to be neat and like everything like perfect?
I'm glad you asked that. Okay, so there's a disorder called obsessive compulsive personality disorder, OCPD. And it's very confusing because it's a very similar name. But with that disorder, which we'll talk about later, people want everything to be perfect and just so, like everything has to be a certain way. And they have a little bit in common, but it's a very different presentation. So we'll talk about that in chapter 13, but they're very commonly confused. My family has a lot of obsessive compulsive personality disorder people in it. And people will refer to it as OCD, which is not quite correct. So we'll talk about that more later. I'm glad you asked. And a lot of us have elements of this. I mean, a lot of us have some degree of this disorder, of every disorder that we're talking about. But only when it starts to take up a lot of time. So one of the criteria with this disorder is it has to be 1 or more hours per day. Right, so the obsessions and compulsions have to take up at least an hour or more each day. Right, so it's not like a little passing thing, it's taking up a chunk of your time. The only other criteria for this is that you have the presence of obsessions and compulsions. So, which is pretty, I think, intuitive given the name of the disorder. But let me give you an example of how this could go from like a typical behavior to an atypical one. Right? Every night before I go to bed, I check to make sure that my front door is locked. Right? It's normally locked, but I always go up to the front door as like part of my routine. I take my dog out, put my cats out, give them all treats, and then I go to check to make sure the front door is locked. Okay, so checking it, and then I go to bed. Let's say I go into my room and I'm like, did I check the door? I don't remember. And I go back and check it one more time. That's still maybe taking 1 to 2 minutes of my day. Not abnormal at all. But let's say that like I start getting into this pattern where I lock it. And then I'm like, did I really lock it? Maybe I should lock it and unlock it a couple of times just to make sure it's really locked. And then I go in my room and I'm laying there in bed and I can't sleep because I'm not sure that the door is actually locked. And it's starting to influence my sleep. And I'm getting out of bed in the middle of the night to go make sure that the door is locked rather than sleeping. Now I've gone from just kind of a normal behavior to something a little more intrusive. It's interfering with my life in some way. And that's the nature of this disorder. People feel like they have to go check something. They have to wash their hands according to certain rules to avoid getting contaminated or getting sick. They have to perform a behavior a certain number of times. Things have to be even or balanced in order for them to be okay. And it causes problems because it's interfering with your life. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can be spread out through the day. But for a lot of people, it can take up quite a bit more than that. But a minimum of an hour on average per day. I have an example of this that I want to play for you, and then we'll watch her later and see her treatment. So this is a young mother who struggles with OCD, and not uncommon for new parents to struggle with this. Her fear starts to revolve around her son and around contamination. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Too many passwords to remember. So I'll play this for you. It's about 7 minutes long. So you can see what this looks like to her treatment, because I have a clip of her going through a treatment for this as well. But what you see in that is right, she has these compulsions that she performs. She's washing her hands, what did they say, 22 times in 30 minutes, right? Her hands are cracking and bleeding because she's so obsessed with trying to perform this so she doesn't contaminate her son, right? So her fears are largely around contamination and then someone stealing him or taking him. And that can be how this presents. It can present in a lot of different ways for people, but it's taking up a lot of her time, causing her distress and impairment. And there's a couple of different theories as to what causes this and then how we can treat it. The first one by far is not the best, but it's something that was referenced for a lot of years. Freud came up with a theory related to childhood experiences revolving around potty training or toilet training. Now, this doesn't have a lot of merit behind it, but there's some kind of good ideas in there. When a child is learning to potty train at a young age, they're learning to control their body, right? They're learning control over their like excrement, right? They're learning to control over when they have to go to the bathroom and if they hold on to it or let it go, where they do that and so on. Freud believed that if you were too harsh or too lenient during potty training, that it would have correlates to adult behavior. So he came up with the term anal retentive. Someone who's anal retentive wants everything to be a certain way, like they have to be in control of everything. He talked about it literally as you are like retaining your feces and wanting to have control over that process, and how that could correlate to your behavior as an adult who's overly like tidy and neat and anal retentive. Now, there's not a ton of support for that, but there is a lot of like developmental stuff where you want to be careful in the process of potty training. You don't want to shame children for too many accidents or not be harsh enough that you kind of encourage them to have that autonomy. So there's a little bit of like truth in there, but not the best, but it is one theory that we sometimes talk a little bit about. So going back to kind of work through those unconscious conflicts or control issues related to childhood, much more strong, like is the second one here. The behavioral perspective is only concerned with the compulsions. Remember, the compulsions are the behaviors that you're performing over and over again. So from this perspective, we're going to try and recondition you. We're going to try and stop the behaviors. So we do something called exposure and response prevention. We expose you to something that causes you anxiety, and then we don't let you do whatever would make you feel better. So if you normally wash your hands a certain number of times, we don't let you wash your hands, right? If you normally would check something, we don't let you check. The idea is to break the like reinforcement cycle. And so you stop feeling like you have to do it, because with this disorder, it gets reinforced constantly. Every time you perform that ritualistic behavior and something bad doesn't happen, you've only strengthened the behavior. So we have to stop it. And really interesting, this was like 2 years before COVID. So like 4 years ago now at this point, I had a student in my class, she sat right there, right in the front. And she would get up and leave like 5-6 times on average, every class, every single class. She would get up and walk out. She always did it quietly, but it was like, it was noticeable. Like after like a class or two, it was like, in my mind, I'm like, what is she doing? Like, I just figured she had to go to the bathroom. She had something going on. I didn't ask her. I didn't make a big deal of it. But she would get up, be gone for like 5 minutes and then come back. And it was a lot. And everyone noticed, right? But, nothing came of it. And I had this similar lecture that day. And after class, she came up to me and she's like, have you ever wondered where I go? And I was like, yes, I'm so glad. Why are you going to tell me? Like, I was so excited, like, yes. But I didn't want to ask you. I didn't want to be rude. I just assumed you needed to leave for whatever reason. She's like, well, I go to my car every single time that I leave. Okay, like all the way to the parking lot? She's like, yeah, I go out, I run to my car to make sure that it's locked. And then I run back to class. I was like, every single time that you leave, that's where you're going? I was like, good for you. You must be running. She's like, oh, I book it every time. Like, so I'm not gone too long, but I run to my car, just double check, lock it really quickly again, and then come back. And she's like, and I didn't realize that was like a thing until today when you were talking about this. I was like, well, I'm really glad you told me. And I think that next class, you shouldn't get up and leave. I'm like, if you go to get up, I'm going to tell you to sit back down. And she had this look of like terror on her face and didn't show up the next class. And I felt so bad, right? I was like, oh my God, I caused her anxiety. And like, I felt awful about it. But then she came the following class and she looked so uncomfortable. The whole class, she sat there and I could just see her like stressing, but she didn't leave. Not once. I think she was afraid I would say something to her. So she didn't get up. She sat there the whole time and she stopped leaving. She never left anymore. After she had told me, it was like, she felt like she couldn't do it. And she's like, at the end of the semester, she's like, I don't do it anymore. Like telling you was enough that I felt like you would hold me accountable. And I stopped doing it. She's like, I sometimes check between classes, but I don't go during class anymore. Right. And that's the idea here is once you stop doing that, right, it loses a little bit of its power and you break that cycle. And then the thought is that ideally you learn that it's okay if you don't perform that behavior, it's still going to be all right. Now, if something bad were to happen, like she didn't do it and someone stole her car, there'd be no recovery and it would take a long time to fix that. But most of the time when you do this, things go fine and you start to lose a little bit of that connection and things get better. Yeah. What,
like why in that case, like why would she need it? Like,
yeah,
she as a child, like someone like their car.
Maybe, or someone stole like her parents' car because it was unlocked, or maybe you saw it in a movie where it was, people get an irrational idea in their head that if my car is unlocked, someone will steal it. Right. And maybe, right, but maybe not. Right. I mean, they would have to notice and then know how to take it. And like, a lot of things would have to happen. So it can be rooted in like an irrational belief, for sure, right? There's a lot of like cognitive elements to this, or it could be something that they just like acquired randomly one day and then started reinforcing. So it can be either, really. And there are some cognitive elements to this. People start blaming themselves for things that are out of their control, right? Like, I didn't do X and Y happened. Okay, well, maybe X and Y were completely unrelated, but in their mind, they've connected them and they've blamed themselves. So we start to blame ourselves, expecting bad things will happen. And so we have to kind of look at, what are those thoughts? How rational is this? If you don't lock your car, what's the worst that could happen, right? And what's the most likely outcome that would happen? And trying to challenge that. Might also be low levels of serotonin, right? So sometimes we prescribe antidepressants, again, for people who struggle with like very kind of more intense OCD. But it's a lot of like behavioral and cognitive stuff, looking at thinking patterns, challenging people's beliefs, and then trying to stop the cycle, right? It really is a very like operant conditioning thing. The more that you do the behavior, the more that you reinforce it. So we have to stop the behavior in order to stop that cycle. And I'll show you Stephanie, back to her. They do an exposure and response prevention with her, and it is incredibly effective, right? After, I think they say 9 sessions or something like that, you can see the huge change, and her son looks so happy at some of these changes. So I'll play that for you, but it's a great example of what this can look like, this exposure and response prevention. Let me pause this.
I was normal anyway.
All right. But what I'd love, right, seeing her son like walking like that and able to pick things up, you can see just the massive amount of progress that she made in 9 sessions. Not gone, obviously. It might be something that is there to some degree for some time for her, but she was able to make quite a bit of progress, right, through doing that exposure and response prevention. But I always think as I watch that, like, how gross, stop rubbing. I'd want to wash my couch now after rubbing the mail all over it. Again, we all have a little bit of these things, and you might have things that bother you or don't bother you, but when it starts to interfere, it's affecting relationships, affecting your life, causing damage to her son, right? Maybe tension in her marriage, right? Those are things that take it from kind of normal into the realm of more of a disorder. And there are a couple of what we call obsessive compulsive related disorders. These are disorders that have things in common with OCD. They have elements of it, but they are a little bit of an offshoot. Now, each one of these is its own separate disorder, but they do have common elements to OCD. The first one is hoarding. Hoarding disorder, which used to be called just being a packer. Right, this is somebody who acquires an excessive amount of stuff. They're always acquiring possessions, and they have a hard time letting go of them, even if they're worthless or hazardous or unsanitary. Maybe picking things up from the trash or off the street, right? Going out and shopping and buying massive amounts of things because they were deals or on sale, and then just never even opening them and having boxes upon boxes everywhere. Keeping magazines from 40 years ago because you might need it one day, right? Even though they're all piled up and you can't even walk into your house anymore. Lots of TV shows on this where you see people, they're not even able to walk in their home. They can't sleep in their beds. Their kitchens are so full with trash and stuff. Sometimes people do this with pets where they become animal hoarders as well. And then you add that level of like mess and sometimes filth on top of the stuff that they have. But oftentimes with this, people have a very difficult time letting go of things. Like, I can't throw away this cup because this cup represents the time that we shared in class today. And if I get rid of it, I'm not honoring that time. I'm going to save it just in case. And then I do that with every cup I ever have. Can you imagine how much stuff I would have? Right. And it can be very difficult to get people to break this cycle and let things go. But it oftentimes creates very unsanitary or unlivable conditions if people have this intensely, or maybe they start taking out storage units and they're spending a lot of money on storing all of their stuff somewhere else so that it doesn't affect their home. Yeah, did you have a?
Like that states as well.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, I'm not going to throw away the toilet paper roll.
Yeah.
No, I finished it. Like, maybe I can use this.
I might need it for something. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of, there's an element of that too. There's like a frugality to it in addition to like an acquiring of stuff. And you give that stuff so much meaning that you can't get rid of it, right? In any way. Yeah.
It's like somewhat relatively common, like hoarding disorder.
To a degree,
Like
right?
in the States, right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a tendency to have more stuff than other countries. Yeah.
And then always is the quality.
You could be, yeah. And I think that's a hard thing with a lot of disorders is you might be on like the path to it, but it doesn't mean you have it, right? There are a lot of people who collect things or acquire things, but it doesn't interfere with your finances. It doesn't interfere with your ability to live and be okay, right? But when it starts to be where you can't even walk into your own room because it's wall to wall stuff, or sleep in your own bed, or you can't pay your rent because you spent so much money on buying stuff that you didn't need, then we've crossed over. Right? This used to be just not even its own disorder, but it was added to the DSM-5 because it's become so common in our culture to acquire a lot of stuff. A couple of houses down from us, I can tell they're hoarders because like their entire driveway is just filled with stuff, always filled with stuff, right? And every now and then they clear it out and then there's more stuff, right? And they open their garage and it's like packed from floor to ceiling with stuff, right? You can oftentimes see this very visibly, even on the outside of a home, when people have this to like an extreme degree. Yeah.
Wasn't it Howard Hughes?
Yeah, right. OCD for sure. Right. He had a lot of obsessions and compulsions and anxieties. Trichotillomania, probably the most fun of all disorders to say, right? Trichotillomania, hair pulling disorder. Kind of related to this, people pull their hair out in response to anxiety. And it's oftentimes mindless, but it can cause some serious issues. People end up with bald patches on their head because they're pulling their hair out, bald patches on their arms. My daughter, Emma, during COVID, and I think she was struggling with anxiety, as a lot of people were, started pulling out her eyelashes and her eyebrows. She had 0 eyebrows and eyelashes for like a year, and everyone would make fun of her for it, which we got her into like help for that. But it was in response to anxiety. Right? And oftentimes people do this mindlessly. They just start pulling on their hair, almost like a coping mechanism. Like some people will like twist like their hair or like pull on a shirt or a sweater. This becomes like pulling your hair out. And very related to that, skin picking disorder or excoriation, people will pick at scars on their arms or legs, and they end up with massive infected like wounds all over their body because they're not able to just leave them alone. So with both of those two in the middle, you're picking at or pulling on things almost mindlessly, and it can cause some issues, whether it's massive spots of missing hair or infected sores all over your body. Both of these can be very visible depending on where people are doing this on their body. Yeah.
Is the concept of like impulse control disorders no longer a thing? Is that why this is now obsessive compulsive?
So the reason they put these here is because there's like an obsessive anxiety that leads to a compulsive behavior of picking or pulling, versus more like impulse control. We tend to put more in like addiction, or sometimes it's an element of like ADHD. It's kind of like absorbed into other things. It's like a piece of other disorders, versus these ones have that like pattern of like a thought to a behavior, where you have to break the cycle so that they fit here best. I don't know if I agree that this one fits here best. They moved this last one in the current DSM. It used to be in a different chapter, and I think it fit better there in a different area. But body dysmorphic disorder is now considered an obsessive compulsive related disorder. And with body dysmorphic disorder, or BDD, people start to obsess that some aspect of their appearance is defective or maybe grotesque in some way. And oftentimes, if you would look at this person, there's nothing abnormal. Like you're looking at someone and they look completely normal, but they've decided that their nose or their chin or like part of their body is awful and gross and everyone's staring at it. So they stop going out in public. They might have multiple procedures and surgeries in order to try and make it better. Some people argue that Michael Jackson might have had body dysmorphic disorder to a degree with all the procedures that he performed. He did have medical issues as well, but this is often somebody who decides that like, oh, my nose is grotesque. Everyone's staring at it. I'm going to hide it all the time. And so they have multiple like procedures to try and fix it, but it's never to the point where they're happy with it. So we get that element of like the obsessive thought and then the compulsive behaviors that go with it. There's a really kind of wild and rare offshoot of this disorder. I'll just mention it. It's called a body integrity identity. Integrity identity disorder. sometimes called amputee identity disorder. Sorry, they changed the name of it. Body integrity identity disorder is where people start to feel like a part of their body is not their own and they want it medically removed. Really rare and very intense. It's like a more intense version of this, but much less common. And so people like will believe like my hand is not my hand. Like it's not mine. It doesn't belong to me. It's like a foreign entity. And there have been cases where people have even gone to the point of amputating a limb because they feel that so severely. Really rare. And it leads to a lot of like ethical debates about like if a person feels like the hand is not their own, should they have the right to have it removed, right? If they're of sound mind, and how do we determine that and all sorts of stuff like that. But this is kind of a rare offshoot of body dysmorphic disorder, which is way more common. Again, someone feeling part of their body or appearance is defective. The one little caveat here is it cannot be only due to weight. So you can't be like, I hate my stomach and I feel really overweight, and that's the thing that you are obsessed over. If it's exclusively related to weight, then we have to look at eating disorders, right, which we'll talk about later. So it has to be not related to weight, but it could be any part of your body or even like smell of your body. It can be anything related to appearance or smell and so on. All right. So two things really quickly before we're done. Don't forget about these reminders up here, right? So the paper due by tonight, make sure you get that turned in, get those 10 points. Start studying and thinking about the exam. The study guide, we talked more about it than I was going to talk more next week, but I think we kind of covered it. I'll see if there are any questions on Tuesday. And then what we'll do on Tuesday is we'll start chapter 5. I already put the slides up and made sure they were visible, so they're visible. But chapter 5 on stress and trauma. So we'll talk about dissociative identity disorder and PTSD and a couple of others. So that's what we'll cover on Tuesday. But I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you. I'll see you on Tuesday.